You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is the lost episode from season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who was working on it shows any time like to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the lost episode was written entirely by Matt Greenaway. During the production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present results in them getting very angry and forbidding you from ever mentioning it to Matt. I first heard of it at the event where David Silverman was speaking. Someone in the crowd asked about the episode, and Silverman simply left the stage, ending the presentation hours early. The episode production number was 7G06. The title was Dead Bart. The episode labeled 7G06, Moaning Lisa, was made later in giving Dead Bart's production code and hidden the letter's existence. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about it that will cause them to do everything they can to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Greenaway. And at the fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I had followed him, probably expected to typically encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode through, though, all color drained from his face and he started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, handed it to me. He begged me to never mention the episode again. The piece of paper of the website addressed on it. I would rather not say what it was, for reasons you'll see in a second. I entered the address into the browser, and I came to the site over completely black except for the line yellow text, a download link. I clicked on it, and the file started downloading. Once the file was downloaded, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I have ever seen. System restore didn't work. The entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this, though, I copied the file on the CD. I tried to open it on my own empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other episode, but a very poor quality animation. If you've seen the original animation for some enhancement in evening, it was similar but less stable. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer seemed angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa seemed anxious, Bart seemed to have genuine anger and hatred for his parents. The episode about the Simpsons going on a plane trip near the end of the first act. The plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around, as you expected. However, as the plane was about 50 feet off the ground, Bart broke a window on the plane and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea of the animated style of the Simpsons world represent life, and that death turns things more realistic. This was used in the episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move, and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with a shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting on their table, crying. Crying went on and on. It got more pained and sounded more realistic, better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. The characters could barely be made out. They were stretching and blurring. They looked like deformed shadows with random bright colors thrown on them. They were faces looking in the window, flashing in and out so you were never sure what you looked like. The crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened the title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa was skeletally thin and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and they were walked into the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they go to the grave, Bart's body was just laying in the front of his tombstone, looking like it did at the end of the Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to the summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the version I saw. You can't tell what Homer is saying. The view zoomed out of the episode came to a close. The tombstone in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest stars on them, some that no one ever heard of in 1989, some that haven't even been on the show yet. All of them had death dates on them. For guess who died since? Like Michael Jackson, George Harrison, the dates were then or they were died. The credits were completely silent and seemed handwritten. The final image of Simpsons family on the couch, like in the intros, but all drawn in hyper-realistic, lifeless style of Bart's corpse. The thought occurred to me after seeing the episode for the first time. You could try to use the tombstone to predict the deaths of the living Simpsons guest stars, but there's something odd about most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same date.